The Stonevault is one of 4 War Within dungeons that will be a part of the first season pool. Let's quickly break down how these mythic bosses will work. Starting with E.D.N.A, this is a repetitive one-phase encounter. Starting off, E.D.N.A will cast Volatile Spike. Make sure you're not getting hit by these swirls. They will also spawn spikes shortly after, and when these spikes are destroyed, they will apply a dot to your entire group, causing the party to take fire damage. The rest of the fight is about controlling the pacing of this damage. E.D.N.A will cast Refracting Beam, causing the boss to release fiery energy at all 5 players, stagnated. Any volatile spikes hit by these beams will be destroyed. Your group will want to make sure you're at least destroying a few of these beams because eventually the boss will cast Earth Shatterer. This will deal a burst of nature damage to your group and destroy all remaining spikes. If too many spikes are active, your group will take very threatening levels of damage. Healers, you're gonna need to be ready to counter this damage, and DPS, use those defensives. I personally recommend destroying 2 spikes on each refracting beam cast, but it's up to your group. Last but not least, Seismic Slam is the big tank buster. This will deal a staggering level of physical damage to the tank and applying a nasty damage over time effect. Healers are going to want to dispel this as soon as possible, and when dispelled, the tank will gain a 50% damage reduction for 6 seconds. Keep the spikes under control, and the Earthen Defense Neutralization automation will fall. The next 2 bosses can be done in any order, but we're going to start with Skarmorak. This boss will start by hitting the tank with Crystalline Smash. This will deal physical damage to the tank. Just make sure you have any type of mitigation active. Once this cast finishes though, it'll spawn 3 crystal shards. Your group will need to defeat these crystals in a timely manner, but once they are destroyed, they will apply a nasty dot to your entire party called Crystalline Eruption, which deals nasty shadow damage. This effect can actually stack, hence why you need to kill 1 shard at a time, let the debuff expire, and then kill the next one and repeat this pattern. Skarmorak will also cast Unstable Crash, which has a few components to it. First, avoid the slam. This one's obvious. Once this cast finishes, you're gonna then need to dodge Unstable Fragments, which are these large purple swirls. Once these swirls land, they will spawn in Unstable Energy Fragments. Soaking these fragments will increase your damage done and healing done by 50% for 30 seconds, while also dealing shadow damage over time. This effect can stack, and picking up these fragments will be pivotal in hierarchies. Lastly, Skarmorak will cast Fortified Shell, causing the boss to gain a massive absorb shield and will increase in size for each shard that is still active. During this, the boss will deal ramping damage through Void Discharge. Stack in melee and break the shield as fast as possible. Once the shield breaks, it simply rinse and repeats. The Master Machinist encounter has to be the most hectic boss encounter in Mythic Plus, probably ever. These bosses do not share health, but have a lethal in range if not killed within seconds of each other, so be sure you're properly cleaving. Tanks, be aware of Doralita's tank buster called Igneous Hammer. Just make sure you're healthy or using a defensive. Doralita will also cast a frontal called Lava Cannon. Everyone's going to want to make sure they're dodging this giant orb, and believe me, you'll have plenty of practice before this encounter on the trash mobs. Brock, on the other hand, will be casting Molten Metal. You'll need to make sure you're interrupting this whenever possible. It does threatening levels of damage to your group in a form of a dot. Luckily, it can be removed with snares like Freedom, Tiger's Lust, Post Haste, Shapeshifting, but try to interrupt it if possible. During the encounter, Brock will also cast Exhaust Vents, opening up 3 of the 4 corner vents, which will fill the Eirich with ground effects. Do not stand in this, and try to bring the boss to the closed vent area, and this is going to just make dodging mechanics easier. Now the big mechanic is going to deal with the giant scrap cubes. Scrap Song will have Brock leap to the side of the arena and send a giant cube through the encounter space, dealing lethal damage to anyone in its path. Doralita will eventually cast Blazing Crescendo, which will drag the scrap cube to the center of the arena, detonating it seconds later, dealing lethal damage to anyone caught in the proximity of the explosion, and will send out waves of lava in the cardinal directions. Standing on the closed vent is the key to success here. It'll keep your party clear of almost all avoidable damage. Just make sure you figure out a way to kick the boss who jumps about 60 yards away. Make sure you cleave evenly as possible, or enjoy the run back. As the Prophet Dorky spoke, good luck. Void Speaker Eirich. Starting off, the boss will have 2 Void Rifts on either side of him. These will be important later on. The first cast you'll notice is called Unbridled Void, which is a giant frontal cone. Just make sure you're dodging it. Next, the boss will inflict all party members with Void Corruption. This is a ramping dot that does shadow damage every 3 seconds, increasing indefinitely. The only way to remove this is by moving within 15 yards of those Void Rifts. When a player does have their debuff removed, the Void Rift will jump to a random new location around the edge of the room. Lastly, the boss will cast Entropic Reckoning, causing all players to drop a pool of entropy after a short period of time. Try to drop these near the edge of the room if you can. Smart players can also use this opportunity to remove their Void Corruption debuff. Do your best to drop them immediately, but I do recommend healers first, followed by DPS, and tanks last. As long as you're consistently dropping your Void Corruption, this boss does feel pretty easy. Quick shout out to all my Patreon supporters, because without you guys, there would be much less content like this. Hope you're all staying happy, healthy, and I'll catch you all in the next one. Peace.